We're going to get back into it. I believe we're on exercise 8 here now, the wheel rim. So by the end of this, we're going to end up with something that looks a little bit like this. So we're going to be using a lot of complex tools today, a lot of symmetry, mirroring. We're going to introduce a new topic called draft, so angling things after you've already made a shape. And then we're going to get a little bit more into filleting and chamfering. So a little bit more of what we've done previously, and a little bit extra. So let's start it off here. Our first 2 steps. First, I'm just going to turn everything off except for the front plane. I've already done that. And I'm going to create a new sketch. And this new sketch, if I can actually like select what's on the screen here, is going to be on the front plane. So I'm also going to hop into the front plane. And our next step here is to start to draw. So we have like 5 circles. I believe 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually 4. Excuse me. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we got 4 circles, and then we also have a line going from the origin to our biggest circle, and that's a construction line. So I just hit L and then Q there. And then we have 2 other lines that go from our center point to the second smallest circle. Now, you can kind of pop them however you want to in right now, because what we're going to do after the 2 lines are drawn is we're going to grab our symmetric tool. So you can either go underneath your constraints, hit symmetric, or search for symmetric. And we're going to click on our construction line and those 2 lines. And we'll make them symmetric about that construction line. So this is our step 2. If you look at the tutorial, you've drawn something like this. We've done that. We've made them symmetric. Great. Step 3, we're going to start popping in some dimensions. So if we look back here, we can hit D for dimension, and it asks us to make actually a degree dimension between these 2 lines. So I clicked on this line. I'm going to click on this line. Boom. Degree dimension, and it tells us that needs to be 30. So we've got that. Now what I'm going to do is start working from outside in to dimension the rest of this. So our biggest circle needs to be 500. Our second biggest circle is going to be 475. If we go inward, this one right here, 400. And finally, the last blue one that hasn't been defined there, 150. So we have all of our circles defined. Now we can actually start to get into basically extruding it in a little bit of a different way. But before we do that, I'm just going to call this main sketch. You can also, main sketch is probably the best name for it. I'm going to hop back into isometric mode. So again, hitting the gray cube, isometric, because we're going to be going 3D in a moment. And if you look at the next step, we are going to extrude. Now we're doing extrude a little bit differently. We're going to be doing a symmetric extrude. So I'll show you what that looks like in a second. We're going to select these 2 areas and make that happen. So if we do that, we're going to hit extrude or shift D, click these 2 areas, and what I want you to look at, I'm actually going to go in my right view. You do not need to do this. If I click symmetric, see what happens there. So again, we're doing a regular blind. We're extruding one direction from our sketch. If you do symmetric, it extrudes both directions to the depth that you specify. Now, they're telling us here our depth needs to be 150. So symmetric just extrudes both directions to the depth that you specify from your sketch. It's not one directional, it's 2 directional, which is nice because, I mean, we're working on a wheel, so it's nice to kind of, and it's going to be symmetric at the end of the day. Nice to start doing that properly. So let's rename this. I believe this is going to just be called wheel rim, and that's probably step 7. And step 7 actually is extruding the central hub of our wheel. So in order to do that, in order to see that hub again, we need to turn our main sketch back on. We're going to click the eye, and we can see our sketch again. And then now we need to extrude, or shift D, and select these 2 areas. Now you don't want like a Pac-Man, you want to actually have that circle there. And in order to extrude this properly, again, we're going to do an additional symmetric extrude. The depth's going to be a little bit larger, 200. What's different this time is we need to include a draft, and they're telling us the draft needs to be 5 degrees. Now, if I hit tab there, what I want you to notice is it's starting to angle inwards, which we actually do not want. We don't want it to be like an hourglass shape. If we look at a tutorial here, we actually want it to be like if we stack 2 cups open side towards each other, we want the angle to be going outwards. So we don't want that hourglass shape. In order to change that, we can hit this opposite direction arrow here, and then we'll get that. So now you can see how it looks pretty much like the tutorial. That is step 7. So it's asking us next to start extruding one of our spokes, so we can check this right now. Now with the spokes, and let me hop back to isometric view, we may want to turn off our part 2 for a moment, because you're going to need to extrude this area right here. So Shift D again, we can extrude this, we can extrude this. Now I can turn part 2 back on so we see that again. And I believe this is going to be a blind. Yeah, it's going to be a blind. What's different now is it needs to be an extrude add. So it's a blind extrude, extrude add. It's going to be 25 millimeters. And we need to merge it with the 2 parts we just made. So the wheel rim and then that hub in the center. It's already merged with the wheel rim. The merge scope here is telling us that if we click on merge scope, we can also click on part 2 or the hub. And if we hit check, they will all be extruded together, or added together is what I should say. Our next step, step 9, is to actually now also add a draft to our spoke. So we added a draft here, it kind of angled this face here. We're going to do the same thing with the 2 sides of the spoke. Draft tool's up here. I believe this is it right here. Yep. You can also just search for draft. And it's asking us for 2 things. What's our neutral plane? So what's the plane that's not going to be angled? And what entities or planes do you want to draft? So what do you need to be angled? Now, let's just change our draft angle first. It's going to be 15. Our neutral plane is going to be this whole surface here. And then our entities to draft, it's going to be this side, boom, and this side, boom. Now, if I can rotate properly and hit the good old check, that has been done. Got 2 draft edges there, and our next step, I believe, if we look at step 10, is to copy it. So we're going to use mirror to copy it, and our trick this time, it's telling us, hey, like, we need to like do this part. The problem is the part is all added together. If we look in our parts list here, wheel rim is the only part. So like if we tried mirroring it, we would mirror the whole thing, which doesn't work. What we're actually going to do is we're going to mirror the features, hopefully, and that'll work. I believe so. Yeah, we'll try it. I mean, the tutorial says it's going to work. So mirror, this tool up here, we're going to hit mirror. Entities to mirror. We need to mirror our extrude. If it lets me. Come on, buddy. You can do it, buddy. Do I need to click this again? Oh, yeah. Right here it says feature mirror. So if you look here, there's a drop down. This is my bad. I'm just kind of like spacing out right now as I'm making this video. If you hit feature mirror, you can select your features here. Now it's going to say we don't know what's mirrored on. Our mirror plane is going to be the back face of the part that you made right here. So we can click that, and boom goes the dynamite. There you go. You have your feature mirrored there. So if I hit check, that looks good. Let's see what they're telling us to do in 11. We're just applying a fillet, so we're trying to make it nice and smooth there. So let's hop back in here, click fillet, and what's different with this fillet is we're just clicking, we're not clicking on the edge, we're actually just going to be clicking on the face. So this face right here and this face right here. Tangent propagation should be fine. Cross-section circular is also okay. Radius should be 2. It's quite small. It's like almost not noticeable. And if we hit the good old check, boom, you have like a little curved edge all the way around there. So it looks pretty decent. It looks clean, not a sharp angle. Now, if we wanted to make this an actual like wheel, it would not work. We only have one spoke. We need multiple spokes in order to make a wheel rim that works properly, like those you see on a car. In order to make this work, we're going to do a pattern. So the easiest way for you to find pattern, again, is if you just search tools and you look up like a circular pattern. You'll find it under this drop down as it's telling you up here. You want a circular pattern for this next step, so step 12. Similar to what we did with the mirror, you're going to pattern a feature, so you have to hit that drop down for feature pattern. And we actually want to, in a moment, we're going to copy around the spokes. So we need to select our features: extrude 3, draft 1, and mirror and fillet. And it's going red here. It's saying like, hey, I don't know how I'm actually going to like copy this thing around. What's the axis of the pattern? The axis is actually going to be this ring right here, because we're going to copy it around in a circle. Now, this isn't correct to the tutorial. If we look on step 12, we have 5 spokes. So we need to actually change our instance count from 4 here to 5. That looks about right. It's equal spacing. None of this other stuff needs to be checked. And I believe we can move on up. So we've pretty much done everything we need to, except a couple steps. We need to pop some holes into our hub. So if we really actually wanted to screw this into like a car, right? We need to screw it into the wheel bearing and all that. We need to have some holes there for some lug nuts. So in order to start that, we're going to create a sketch. And we are going to start the sketch where we started our central axis a moment ago. And that is step 13. Now step 14, I'm going to hop back into my front view. We need to draw a sketch on here. Just to make things easier for me to see, I'm actually going to turn off my main sketch. We don't need to see that right now. I don't want to get confused. So I am going to draw 2 construction circles. So I grabbed my circle tool, grab my construction tool, and I'm going to make one smaller circle, or one bigger circle. Actually, the smaller circle is not a construction, now that I look at it. And again, we're on step 14 here, so drew one big construction circle, one regular circle, and excuse me, we have to draw one construction line, so that's where I misspoke there a moment ago. And that construction line is going to be between our origin and our larger circle. So if you're looking at what I'm looking at right now, we're looking at step 14. So we've made a smaller circle, construction line, bigger circle, and now we just got to pop these 2 dimensions on there. So D, this one right here is going to be 90. This one right here is going to be 35, not 50, 35. There you go. And we don't have to do anything with that construction line. That's just linking between the 2. Now that we've gotten that, we can hit the sketch. They tell you that you should name this bolt circle, because we'll be using this as a reference in a moment. And if I can spell circle, C-I-R-C-L-E, there we go. We're going to be using it as a reference to drill our holes. So that is step 15. And if we move on to step 16, we're actually going to pop a hole through the center of our hub here. So we're going to hit extrude, we're going to make it a remove, and I'm going to hit this circle that we created, the non-construction line circle. And instead of putting in it as a blind extrude, we're actually going to say through all. So it should just be going straight through the whole part. And then we should be able to hit sketch, and now we got a hole in our good old wheel rim. Now I'm going to turn bolt circle sketch back on, and now we can start to actually draw some holes, or a hole is what I should say. Now, a hole tool is this one up here, if I'm not mistaken. Hole right here. There we go. And again, we're on step 17. We're going to create a hole, and instead of a countersink, it's going to be a counter bore. It's just a type of hole. It's going to be going through the whole wheel. Clearance, that looks good for the whole type. Size, we actually want it to be an M10 according to the tutorial. And it'll set just some sizes for the diameter of countersink or counter bore, I guess is what I should say. So in an inset, and then some extra depth dimensions there. It's asking us, where do we actually want to put this thing? Notice it's saying sketch points to place the hole. We have a point right here, the end of our construction line on our construction circle. I'm going to click that. It's automatically going to set the merge scope, and we're good to go. So yeah, M10. This may be a little bit different compared to the tutorial. If we want to set it to 17.25, we could do that. And then this would be 10. That sets it to custom, but that could crop up later in the tutorial if you're doing like mass properties, if this isn't the same. This looks good to me. Sketch plane is unchecked in the tutorial. I'm again just looking here at step 17. I'm just reading through all these different specs right here. M10 is what they specify, but then over here it's a little bit different. So I don't know what's up with that entirely. Once we have that, we're going to do another circular pattern. So basically, again, we need to do a circular pattern feature in order to copy this all the way around. So I'm going to turn off, no, we'll keep bolt circle on. Grab circular pattern from my drop down up here, or you can search it. The entities, we're not using a part, we're using a feature, and we want to copy this hole. And again, we're most likely going to be using this edge here as our axis of the pattern. So if we click here, we're going to be using this edge, and we don't want 4 holes, we actually want 5 again. So equal to like our spokes, right? You can kind of see that right now. Equal spacing's good, and we should be able to hit the check. Looking good. Now, step 19 is kind of a little funky. I'm going to turn off the bolt circle sketch. We don't need it. 19 asks us to turn on the main sketch again. And what we're going to do here is actually start to bore out like the rim for our wheel rim, basically like the void that's going to arrive in here that you inset the tire into. So in order to do that, we're going to create a sketch, or extrude, excuse me, and it's going to be an extrude remove. Now, I need to click on this area, but it's going to be, again, a little bit strange. What we're going to do is we're going to turn off the wheel rim for a second, and we're going to click on this little tiny area. We're going to turn on the wheel rim again, and we're going to set the merge scope to be our actual wheel rim. Now, we need to make it so that our end type is up to the face. Now the end type, if we look at this, and again, I'm on step 5 right now, so we're just kind of like reading through this list. We have an extrude to remove. We've selected that area. Now what we need to do is we need to set it so it's up to face, and the face that we're going to go up to is here. Now, the thing that we don't want to is we don't want to lose this little edge right here. So the way we actually make it so we don't go all the way up to this face is we have to check offset distance right here, which I can check right here, and we're going to change this to 20. After we do that, we need a second end position. Now, it's just kind of similar to our symmetric extrude that we did earlier, except it's just defining a different direction of a remove. So for this right here, we don't want it to be at depth. We want it to be up to face again. We're going up to this face right here. We do want an offset again. And again, our offset is 20. So hopefully you're able to follow along with me on that. It's kind of strange, but hopefully it makes some sense for you. Again, what we're doing is we started off of our main sketch. We click that little lip up here, and then we're just like working our way through the list that they've given us. So we're clicking on that small tiny area. We're going up to face. We go to the face of the one side. We check offset distance, and we make it 20. So we're left with that little rim area right there. And then after that, we select second end position. We do the same thing except for the other side. All right. So that is step 19. And 20, we're going to do a bunch of chamfering. So for slide 20, you got to close out of your extrude. And what we're going to do now is we are going to grab our chamfer tool, and we're going to make it so it's equal distance. Instead of the distance being 5, we're going to set it to 8. And then the entities to chamfer. If we look at it from our front view, we're going to select this edge, this edge, this edge. If we look at it from, let's say, our right view or side view, we want to chamfer this edge, and this edge. And then finally, if we hop back to our back side, we want to grab this edge right here. And once you have them chamfered, it's just going to look like it has like a little bit of an angle. They ask us to actually fillet these bits right here. So in order to do that, we're going to go back up to the top, fillet or Shift F, and we're going to click on this edge right here. Oh, excuse me. This edge right here, if I can get it. And this edge right here on the inside there. And basically all we're trying to do in 21 is add like a nice little curve on the inside of the wheel there. So again, just so we have something nice to attach or affix the bead of our wheel to if we were to actually put a tire on it. So we can check this fillet here, and we're left with, and again, hopefully you're able to follow along with me so far, we're left with essentially our wheel rim. Now, the only other things that are left for us is to actually set the material and start to do some mass property stuff. Setting the material again under wheel rim here, you can assign material. I believe in the materials library, they ask for aluminum and then 1060. And if we check that off, that looks a Gouda. So if you want to turn off sketches, you can. If you want to leave them on there, you're fine. At this point, you can check out your mass properties once you select the part, and we can move on to steps. So this is probably one of the most complex exercises we're going to do in part design using Part Studios. Step might be a little bit simpler. We're just building in complexity and a lot more features over time. The takeaway from this, circular pattern is the biggest thing. Hole is a nice tool long term for you to know and understand and learn about. But circular patterning is ideal, as well as like copying or mirroring features rather than parts. So just know moving forward, step is going to be our next thing, and then after that we'll get into part design using Part Studio. So I'll see you in a moment for